I'm Yumi. I started at KIS back in 2011 for seventh grade, and I had transitioned over from a very traditional Korean public school where we didn't learn English. We didn't really have any sort of concept of foreign education. And so I came to KIS, seventh grade, struggled a lot, spent my middle school years really catching up on English language, culture, getting assimilated to KIS. And then I spent all 4 years of my high school years there, taking a bunch of different classes all across the different things that KIS had to offer, really. And then graduated in 2017 and pretty much have graduated from college now, have made some huge turns in life, but I come back every year pretty much since I've graduated to talk with the students and the alumni. So it's a pleasure to be back.
You've been at KRS for your high school years, and I want to ask if you had any memorable experiences or extracurricular activities that maybe helped you grow as a person or student.
Some of the most memorable things and the thing that had the most impact probably on not just my time at KIS, but my entire college years and beyond that was I was actually I was part of the first cohort at KIS to be part of the AP capstone program with Mr. Van Moppes and at that time Mr. Robert Larson. It was really conversation based, interest based, and a lot of introductions to research and what's really out there. And so I remember taking research and AP seminar and research, and then really kind of getting this interest in what research was, which before taking that course, I was just on the side of, oh, isn't it just when you Google things and read over a bunch of different websites and stuff. And I really started developing this interest in what can I find out about the world. And that's where I actually tied in a lot of the things that I was interested in. So I remember writing my final paper for AP research on how to do research about volleyball in an academic setting and was kind of developing my own grading system for how you identify a great player. And at that time, I thought that I was just kind of pulling these random ideas together and throwing them together and didn't really know what I was doing. But I got to college and realized that that was probably the first time that I had full control of the steering wheel on how I wanted to progress through a field that I knew very little of. And I think that had a really big impact on me, which led me to actually falling in love with scientific research in college and further progress my interest in going to grad school and getting a job that is very research oriented.
Let's go back to when you were 17 or 18
Okay.
years old. So you're in your spring of your senior year and you're making that choice
Mm-hmm.
of what this leap of faith is going to look like, where
Yep.
you're moving on to, and that whole process. Can you share with us how you made those decisions, what that decision was, and then also how that panned out?
So first of all, spring of my senior year, you have to think about the context a little bit. You're talking about a female international student in Korea. I had neon green hair and I had this burning passion for creative writing at the time and wanted to go to college, but didn't know what I really wanted to study. And so I applied to these schools and I'm thinking, why not go for creative writing for now? Because that's what I'm currently interested in. And so I'm looking at the colleges and I was really in between Fordham University in New York and Oberlin College in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And I obviously, if you couldn't tell with the neon green hair, I wanted to go to New York because there was everything there already, right? Because there was a creative writing program, but there was this potential, if I ever wanted to change what I wanted to study, to explore other things. And my parents very much wanted me to go to Oberlin because it's a small school where I get a lot of personalized attention. And if I wanted to pursue that creative writing program, it would end up with me getting a lot of direct feedback, which in the long run would really benefit any kind of career, no matter what you want to study. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're still in Asia. My parents still have a little bit of Asian in them. And so I ended up following what they recommended, and I committed to Oberlin. And funny enough, the first day that I landed on the Oberlin campus for orientation with my parents admitted, actually, we wouldn't mind if you transferred after they experienced campus themselves. And so it wasn't necessarily the university experience that I was looking for, nor were my parents looking for. And I think at that point I had realized, hey, maybe it's time for me to actually follow what I really want, not just necessarily always get advice from my parents and follow what they want me to do, but actually really go out, explore, and see what I want and just commit to that. And so at that point, I think it was a huge turning point, that like few months from the point where I committed to college in March or April to getting on campus in August and absolutely regretting my decision. It was a very interesting period of my time, but I think I that was probably that was the biggest turning point, I would say. I get there in August and they tell me, well, yes, you're a creative writing major, but you're gonna have to take a STEM course as part of the freshman curriculum. And I absolutely hated science my entire time at KIS. I hated it for a passion. And I said, you know what? Let's bite the bullet. We'll take all of them together and just get them done with. So I took math, I took biology, I took chemistry all together. And then I took my one creative writing course. And by the end of that first semester, I realized that I hated my creative writing course, but fell in love with my other 3 STEM courses. And so not only did I not like where I was, but I also didn't like what I was studying. And I found this whole new passion that Oberlin College was not well developed in. And so at that point, really all the little dials were pointing towards you need to move out because you're looking for a school that has a strong STEM program, that is in a city that can offer a lot more opportunities than a school that specializes in writing and the liberal arts. I didn't know a lot of universities at that. And so I started very primitive research about what could I do that involves a little bit of the creativeness of writing and non so traditional science. And I think that really landed me in this whole realm of neuroscience. I'm too scared to commit to a neuro program that's huge. So I'm looking for a neuro program that's maybe a couple hundred students rather than a couple thousand students. So the UCs were off the table. West Coast schools were pretty much off the table. They're too big. I'm looking at the East Coast. I'm not looking at these giant like NYU scale schools. And I find BU, which is a school of like 40,000 students, I think. But the neuro program is just 350 students. BU ended up accepting me. So the day I got that letter, I immediately accepted. And during the summer after my freshman year, I hopped on a plane, I got to Boston, and ever since then have been kind of in that field, in that industry, because that was exactly where all the arrows have been pointing at. And I just refused to kind of acknowledge it. But then once I did, that was the place to be.
How did BU do with the transitioning to a new school, being a transfer student, and what were your strategies to get involved and meet people?
Transferring is kind of like this mysterious thing that people do, but there's never a lot of information about. But in terms of the actual transition and the support you get from the university, I think that is huge because they know, every school knows that their transfer students are going to have a harder time adjusting because you're literally taking knowledge that you gained your freshman year and you're resetting it and have to reformat everything. And so as soon as I signed on to BU, I was getting millions of emails from their transfer department about like, hey, like here are all the upcoming events, here are all the resources, here's a group on, I think at that time it was on Facebook, of all the incoming students that you can meet up with in your area. And so I actually got a lot of support starting in April, but I think overall at orientation, they do a really great job. They send you to the same orientations as all the freshmen so that you learn about the new school, but they also have separate events for transfer students specifically about here's what your coursework is going to look like, here's what life here is going to look like. Here are some faculty members that know BU very well that can help you with your transition. So it was almost like you get a small team that is literally helping every aspect of your transition. And there's making that process of assimilating very faster compared to a freshman, for example.
What drives your active participation in the CAS alumni community?
Overall, I think it's because when I was a student at KIS, of all honesty, I wasn't too happy because one, it was a community that I wasn't 100% assimilated into. So kind of like what I said earlier, I came from a Korean public school background. We didn't have a lot of that at KIS. It was really a lot of students in my year had started at KIS either in elementary or pre-K, and I'd continue it on all the way to high school. And students were very kind of either their parents knew each other, they grew up together. And so I had a hard time really adjusting to KIS life overall. Looking back, if I had someone actually tell me, like, it is totally fine if you don't do MUN, because I hated MUN, but I still did it. If someone was there to tell me that and actually show me that it is possible to go to a great college, be successful without having to check mark off each of the conditions that you think you have to do, I think it would have been a lot more helpful. And I know a lot of my friends that I still stay in touch with from KIS are also on that same boat of, I wish I hadn't done some things when I was a high schooler. And oftentimes those things are just a result of either pressure or because someone told you that you have to do it. And so I like to think that I can go back and hopefully like tell someone that they can pursue something that they think is super weird or something that not anyone else at KIS is pursuing and still come out perfectly fine.
You originally attended Oberlin College, but decided to transfer. So do you have any advice for other students or seniors who are trying to choose the right college for themselves?
Choose that college based off what you actually want, not because of like, oh, this school's ranked higher, it has to be better, right? You want to be able to convey to someone else that you chose your university with a reason. And that reason was because something about it you loved. And if, for example, if I told someone, oh, I chose Oberlin because it had a strong creative writing program, it doesn't say as much as I chose Oberlin because I loved XYZ reason about it. And so really find that aspect that's pulling you towards that school. And if you get there and you find out that you were wrong or you don't like it, just give it up and try something else. And I think that's something that we're really scared to do at a high school level. And that might not even make sense for a lot of people, but that ability to say like, I am choosing this school because of a specific reason, and then later being able to say, oh, I'm changing my decision because I have another reason. Like, you want that reason. If you don't have the reason, it's kind of meaningless. So do not be afraid.